Hi everyone, welcome to episode number 59 of the Bill podcast, and in this episode we'll be going through Git Flow, which is a type of Git branching model. So if you have been playing with Git or not, I would highly recommend you to go through the previous episode. So Git is a distributed version control system. And we will also be using a little bit of GitHub, which is to host your repositories remotely. So if you are not familiar with Git or GitHub, do try to go through the resources either with this screencast or many of the links that I've posted earlier. So let's talk a little bit about what is Git Flow. So almost about 4 years ago, Vincent posted this blog post on a successful Git branching model. So here you have various branches called a feature branch, developer branch, release branch, master branch, which is the production branch. And whether you are developing a feature or you're developing a quick hotfix, there is a sort of a method to do this. And he, of course, goes on with the reasons why he developed it and so on and so forth, how to work with your team members in this little graphs. So let's go through the Git Flow GitHub repository. So Vincent also went ahead and created this as an open source repository so that we can apply this to our current projects. But I found that this one was a little bit old and it somehow didn't work with my computer. And when I came to this issue, there was also Peter who went ahead and forked it. So for this episode, we'll be using the fork of Git Flow, which is being maintained by Peter, and we'll be using the Git Flow AVH edition. So let's get started with Git Flow. Whether or not you will be using in your project will of course depend on your team members and your preference, but I hope through this episode you'll also get to learn about branching, about using some other softwares, about Git Flow and graphs, and so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and get it installed first. So here I am in my command line. I'll just use brew install and then you can simply do Git Flow AVH. Now I have already done so, and if you have also installed it, if you simply do Git Flow version, and there you go, you will have 1.7.0 AVH edition. And if you simply do Git Flow and enter, you will also have the various commonly used commands here. As you can see, feature, release, hotfix, support, version. These are the various commands in Git Flow. So let's get started and use Git Flow in a repository. So the very first thing I'll do is I am in a folder which is completely empty, and let's do a git init. And then let's create a file called cal.md. So we will just play with a simple markdown file so that we don't have to care about the programming language and just concentrate on the versioning. So after that, we will simply go ahead and add this. And then simply we can do git commit -m initial commit. Great. So why don't we open up this file in a markdown editor, one of my favorite, which is called the Mo editor. Now, before we move on, we will constantly be using this command called Git Log. So over here, as you can see, we only have one commit. It says the author, the date, as well as the commit message and the SHA-1 of the commit. Of course, we can press Q to get back to our command line. Now, for a complicated project, if you want to do Git Log, this might be a little bit verbose, or maybe you want to change the format and the look of this graph. For this, let's explore the Git Log command a little bit more in detail. I found this Stack Overflow pretty Git branch graphs here, and there were many answers here. As you can see, you have some aliases with log, graph, and then certain formats, and they are pretty good looking, and according to your preference you can go ahead and format it. So let me show you one of them that I have created, or the one that I use. Let's look at GL, which I have it as an alias. So it adds an option decorate, and it has a date with some blue colors, cyan color, And why don't we just apply it? So GL for this current repository, as you can see, Git Log was a little bit verbose, not in one line, but GL is this. which is kind of what I prefer. So as we are making changes to this simple project, we will go ahead and GL or Git Log to kind of see the entire picture of our project. The other way to look at how your project is progressing in terms of a graph or visually, I also use GitX. So go ahead and download it. I already have it downloaded in my computer, so why don't I go ahead and open GitX app. So the first time I open it, it will ask me to choose the folder. So yep, I will choose the Cosmic Calendar folder. And there you go, you'll see something very similar, but a lot visually. So every time we make a change, we will go ahead and execute the git log command in the command line, as well as come back to the GitX, just so that we have a better picture of what's going on. So we will be adding some information to the markdown file, and I thought of going to this Wikipedia page called the Cosmic Calendar, which kind of gives you the history all the way from the Big Bang to the modern day in just a year. So I thought it will be nice to kind of just have an unordered list of events that are happening, and just to give us a little bit of fun and perspective into the events in a timeline basis. So let's come back to our cal.md and we will create the very first one. Let's just call it Cosmic Calendar. And inside here as a header 2, let's just call it Big Bang. And under Big Bang, I'll just add in some details. And why don't we go ahead and commit it? So if I do a git status, there you go, I have one modified one. So I'm just going to go ahead and add the file, git commit, Big Bang calendar added. So now the fun thing is, why don't we go ahead and execute git log. So there you go, 4 seconds ago, Big Bang calendar added. And at the same time, let's go ahead and look at it in the GitX. And of course, with the command R, there you go, you will see the latest commit and you will see the graph being progressed by 1 step. So let's just say this is how you do your Git normally. So the next question is, how can I implement Git Flow in an existing Git repository like what we have right now? So to do that, we'll simply do Git Flow init. And there will be a bunch of questions. Now personally for me, I am happy with the defaults. So branch name for the production release, yep, I can have it master. Next release, I can have it as developer. Prefix for feature branches, yep, feature, release branch, release, hotfix, support, version tag. Yep, I'm fine with no prefix. And here are the Git hooks. And that's it. Now when you do, if you look at the list of branches, you will see that there is the master branch that we previously had, and automatically we are always on the develop branch. So now let's say you want to have a new feature. And in the new feature, if we come back to our Cosmic Calendar, let's say you want to have the Earth calendar right here. You want to add on along with the Big Bang calendar. So how do you do that? So in this case, we'll simply do Git Flow feature because we are going to be doing a new feature. And since we are going to be starting, we'll say start and then the name of it. So we will simply say earth-cal. So once you execute this command, notice what happens. There are 2 things that's happening. A new branch called feature/earth-cal was created, and you are now automatically on the feature/earth-cal. So basically they are helping you do 2 steps in just 1 command. So why don't we execute git branch once again, and there you go, you will see 3 branches. As usual, let's execute git log, and here they will say that you are in this branch. So basically the master, the feature, and the develop are exactly the same. And if you go to GitX and command R, you will also see that the 3 branches are exactly the same. Great, so let's come back to our file. And in this case, let's just add a little bit of the Earth calendar. And if you do git status, yep, I have modified. So why don't we just add everything? And git commit, added September to November Earth calendar. And just to see what's going on, let's do git branch. Yep, we are in the feature branch. And if you do git log, there you go, you have now a new commit, but that's on the feature branch. As usual, let's come back to our GitX and command R. Now this is how the master branch looks like. If you want to see how the feature branch looks like, yep, this is how it looks like. So you have to sort of go ahead and change the branch. Now let's say while working on this feature, we want to start another feature. Let's say the human calendar. So in this case, we'll simply do git flow feature start and then do human-cal. And immediately the same thing will happen, but notice how many branches we have now. Yep, we have 4 branches. Of course, the 2 feature branch, the master, and the develop. I will just open this in my text editor so that it changes as soon as I change the Git version. And you can see that we are back into the develop branch without any earth calendar. So why don't we go ahead and add the human calendar here? And let's come back to our command line and then do git add calendar, git commit, some human events added. Now what if you want to get back to the earth calendar? All you need to do is git checkout feature/earth calendar. And guess what? You are back to the calendar with the portion with the earth. Why don't we go ahead and add more earth calendar stuff? So I'm gonna add on after November, which are the December events, as well as all the way until the 30th December. And why don't we complete this feature? So to do that, as usual, we will add on all the changes and commit it. Earth calendar completed. Just for curiosity, why don't we go ahead and look at the git status? Yep, everything clean. Git branch, there are 4 of them. And why don't we look at Git log? There is one branch here, which is the human calendar branch, and then we have the earth calendar branch. Okay, so if you want to finish the earth calendar, what you need to do is git flow feature, but instead of start, we will simply do finish and then the name of the feature. Notice what happens when you do this. So it will ask me to merge it back to the develop. So this is in Vim editor. So I'll press escape and then :WQ. And 3 things happen here. The good thing about using Git Flow is that they will actually tell you what you're doing. So the feature branch was merged into develop, and then it was also deleted, and then you are on develop right now. So now if you do a git branch list, you will see that there is 1 less feature branch. And why don't we look at it in terms of graph? So if you do a git log, and there you go, you will see the little branching and merging right here for the earth calendar. The human calendar, of course, is not merged back yet. So this is a very simple example of how you sort of work on a feature and then you kind of merge it back to develop branch. The next feature that we will learn is how to publish it, or rather push it to a remote repository. This time, let's go ahead and create a repository. So Cosmic Calendar. Of course, you can have this repository anywhere else, GitHub, Bitbucket, GitLab, and create a repository. And then let me copy this command and add a git remote origin and then git push origin master. We'll also do git push origin and the develop branch. So notice here when I come back to GitHub and I refresh it, so there you go, you will see the master branch, and when you hit the branch list, you'll also see the develop branch. Now if you want to publish a feature, which means to push to a remote repository, all you need to do is git flow feature and then the feature name. So in this case it is human-cal. Oops, I obviously missed the publish keyword. So git flow feature publish and then the feature name, which is human calendar in this case. And when you do that and you come back to GitHub, you will see that now in the branch list you will also have the feature branch because you published it. Great, so we learned how to create a feature, finish a feature, publish a feature. Why don't we learn how to make a release? Release means to push to the production. And let's just do git flow release and then start 0.1.0, and that is basically the version name you give. So why is it 0.1.0, you may ask? I am basically using the semantic versioning method of giving a version name. So in this case, we are having a minor version. So every time we add a feature, we'll just bump up the minor version until there is backward incompatibility, and then we'll push it to major version basically. So notice once we do that and we list out all the branches, now we will have a new branch called release and then slash the version number. So if you want to push this branch to your remote repository, you can also do the same thing. So git flow release and with the publish keyword and then the number. So once we publish and we come back to our remote repository, guess what? We will see a new branch called release because we have published it. So next, why don't we go ahead and finish the release? So in this case, it will be merged back to the master, and it will also have a little bit of tagging. So now in this case, if we search git tag or if we execute git tag, we will see that this repository has no tag. So why don't we go ahead and finish this release? So we'll do git flow release publish 0.1.0. Sorry, we should not say publish. We should say release finish. And once we execute this, so here we are basically merging it. So yep, I'm okay with the name, the commit message, and write a tag message. So why don't we say we integrated calendar and then :WQ. And it will also ask you to name the commit message. So yep, merge tag 0.1.0. So Git Flow release finish does a bunch of things. And if you see the summary of actions, it is really clear. But let's go ahead and now do a list of the tags. And yep, we have 0.1.0. But more importantly, why don't we go ahead and look at the Git log? Wow, a lot of things are happening right now. So there you see the master branch. Finally, something is being merged right there. And it is also tagged with 0.1.0. So in this case, why don't we go ahead and push all the tags to the remote repository? You will see that 0.1.0 is also there. And of course, you will also see under release there is one. And let's click it. And yep, you have 0.1.0. And of course, upon expanding, you'll also see the tag message. So this is pretty neat because this is how you will basically release your code to production. Now, let's say you are done with doing a feature, but you need a very quick fix. In Git Flow term, it is called hotfix. So why don't we create a hotfix and then we finish a hotfix? So to do that, the syntax or the command is really similar. So Git Flow hotfix this time, and we'll do start. Why don't we add a little heading to it? So in this case, it will not only tell you the summary of actions, but what you should probably be doing. So if you have a page with change log or a version number, you should probably be bumping up your versions there and then commit your fix. So why don't we just add on in a year, just to kind of edit the heading. Let's go ahead and commit it. I have a git alias, so heading amended. And if you now want to finish it, all you need to do is git flow hotfix finish and then the hotfix name. So the cool thing about having your prompt also having the branch name is you can always refer to what you're currently working on. So yep, I'm okay with the commit message. The tag, why don't we name it as heading? Why don't we name it as heading? And yep, I am pretty okay with the commit message as well. So once you do this, notice what happens. Under git tag, you will have two tags. This is for the hotfix because this was also merged back into the master. So why don't we look at the git log? So here you see in our master branch, which is right here, you will see that it is now having a tag called heading. Why don't we go to gitx and have a look at what's our repository right now? So there you go. This is the master branch. And yep, you will see that it is currently at the tag heading, and previously it was 0.1.0. And of course, if you go to the develop branch, you will see the rest of it. And there is the feature branch as well as the human earth calendar branch. Great. So now if you do git push all the tags, this time after pushing the tags, if you come back to your remote repository, you see two releases. And if you want to have a quick look of what the two releases are, you can see the tag, and yep, the current tag is referring to heading. And of course, if you click the releases tab, you see there are two tags right there. So we were playing a lot in the command line on how to execute Git Flow commands in the command line. Now, by Atlassian, we also have this source tree app which you can download. If you do that, you will see a little Git Flow button right up in the header section. And you can also execute Git Flow commands with source tree app. So why don't we go ahead and do that? So I have already downloaded source tree. So let me go ahead and open it. So let me open the repository on my desktop, Cosmic Calendar. And there you go. It is pretty similar to GitX, and it also does a lot more. So you'll see all the branches here, or you can also go to the develop branch or the master branch. And of course, you'll see that this feature human calendar is kind of pending. So why don't we go ahead and finish the human calendar, but this time using the source tree app. So firstly, to finish the feature branch, which is a human calendar, let's check out this branch. So we will do this completely through source tree app. So let's check out feature human calendar. And of course, currently we are under human calendar. And now if we come back to the text editor, we'll see that the part of the human calendar is there. So I'm going to go there and finish it. Something like this, all the way until the microsecond where basically our modern history happens. So instead of using the command line, we will come back to source tree app and let's commit it with the click of this button. And of course, it shows you a little change. And if you kind of scroll up, you'll see, yep, these are the changes you have done. Green means you have added it. Red means you have removed it. So let's commit it. So let's have a message completed human calendar and let's commit it. So if we want to use Git Flow and finish a feature, how do we do it? So we click this button Git Flow right here and there you go. It even recommends this. So finish current. So instead of executing the command in the command line, Git Flow feature finish, human calendar, all you need to do is just finish current. And yep, you can basically choose the default ones, delete the branch, finish feature. Okay. So obviously there will be some merge conflicts here. Okay. So let's go back to our text editor. And why don't we resolve the conflicts? So yep, we do want the Earth calendar to be there as well as the human calendar. So after we are done with resolving the merge conflict, let's do a final commit. So yep, and of course we are back into the develop branch. Just a little note, if you want to play with the source tree app, you can also click this little button Git Flow and you basically have the similar things like start a new feature, a release or a hotfix, or you can even finish them. So you can either use the command line or this application source tree according to your preference. So the final thing we'll do is something to do with the command line once again, and this is completion. So whether you are using the bash shell, which many of you might be using. For me, it is ZSH, or maybe you're even using Fish. So if you go to this GitHub repository, you will find various installations of the Git Flow completion. So I will not show you how to do that because it is quite self-explanatory. You kind of install this file and then you kind of do some sourcing in your profile and you pretty much get it to work. But let me show you what it does. So now if you come back to your command line and if you do Git Flow and then tab, it will show you all the relevant next subcommands. So let's say you want to choose feature and then enter and then tab, it will once again show you all the subcommands. Let's say publish was something we did, finish was something we did, or start was something we did. And then if you do once again tab, it will try to kind of guess, or of course in this case you can simply do a new feature once again. So I found this really handy for command line completion. So go ahead and install the Git Flow completion. So before we end today's episode, just a few links. There is one on Git Flow cheat sheet. I found this really helpful when I was first getting started with the Git Flow. So you have the commonly used commands such as Git Flow init, the feature, and it will also graphically show you what exactly is happening. The second one is also a Git Flow tutorial. And it also explains very well on the various features of Git Flow, and it's by Atlassian. Also check out the source tree blog itself on how to use Git Flow with source tree, some of which we covered today, but of course you can get a little bit of glimpse into how you can use source tree with Git Flow in this article. Now finally, it's always great to know the pros and cons of using the Git Flow and other branching models. One of them is also the GitHub flow. So I highly recommend you to read this Stack Overflow question. There are lots of great links to know both sides of the debate, and it's always good to read them and use it when it is appropriate for your team, for your project, or your preference. And that's it for the Git Flow episode. I hope you We all learned a lot about the graphing, the different software such as GitX or SourceTree, or the ways of branching. So even if you don't use Git Flow entirely, you can maybe use part of it. For example, always branching when you need to create a new feature, or even tagging your production releases. And finally, for the build link of the episode, I will choose devdogs.io. It is a really handy way to basically search through anything in many of the languages and framework. For example, if you search array, it will give you in JavaScript, in DOM, and many other languages. And if you look at the selected of documents, you will see that they will ask you to select many other popular repositories, frameworks such as Sass, Redis, Ruby, PHP, Python. So whether it's programming language, popular frameworks, you can even go ahead and sort of recommend to them what you want to include. So I highly recommend devdogs.io for all things documentation for us developers. And yep, that's it for this week's episode of Bill Podcast. Thanks for listening to it once again. And for all other episodes of Bill Podcast, you can go to the RSS, the iTunes, Vimeo, YouTube, GitHub, or Twitter links.